Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making a date and fig bread loaf, or loaf. It's not bread really, it's more like a cake, but in a loaf tin. And that's going to have some walnuts in as well. And it takes about an hour to bake, but it doesn't take very long to do. It's actually quite simple, but it should be very, very tasty. And I think it's ideal at this time of year. You could even add some spices in if you want to spice it up, cinnamon, ginger, allspice, mixed spice, that sort of thing, as we're coming up towards Christmas. So I've started off by preheating my oven to 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And I have a 2-pound loaf tin. Now, I would recommend greasing that and placing some parchment paper in the bottom. But I actually have a paper liner which fits nicely in that tin, so that's what I'm going to use. But that's not necessary. So I'll go on to the ingredients. And for that I have 180 grams, which is about a cup of these dates which I have chopped, and I've packed them into the cup tightly. So that's about 6 ounces, I think. And then I have 200 grams, which is about 7 ounces, again 1 cup of tightly packed figs, which I have also chopped. These are dried figs or semi-dried figs. I have 60 grams, which is half a cup of walnuts, which I have chopped quite roughly. I have 100 grams, which is a half a cup of caster sugar. I have 60 grams, which is 4 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of butter, which I've allowed to soften to room temperature. Then I have 200 grams of flour. I'm using 100 grams of plain flour and 100 grams of wholemeal flour, but you could just use 200 grams of plain flour, which would be 1 cup plus 1/3 of a cup, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. Then I have 2 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA. I have 1½ teaspoons of baking soda, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. Now the first thing we have to do is to soak the figs and the figs and the dates with the baking powder and the butter in boiling water. So I think I can put everything into one bowl and toss it around a little bit. And the purpose behind this is that the baking soda will react and it will soften the dates and the figs, which tend to have, or particularly the dates tend to, dried dates have a hard skin on them. And I'm just going to put the butter in, and you could mix that in if you want to. I'm just going to press it down a little bit like that and turn it over. I don't need to mix it because it will melt in the boiling water. And for the boiling water, I'm going to use 235 millilitres, which is 1 cup minus 1 tablespoon. And I'm going to put the boiling water in separately because I don't want to risk spilling it, so I'll put that in off camera. And as you can see, it's the baking powder is becoming active because it's frothing up. So I'm going to leave that for about 15 to 20 minutes until it's cooled down, and then once it's just about cooled, I'm going to beat my eggs with my sugar until they're nice and thick and pale. So I've put both my flours into a single bowl, and I'm going to add in the salt and the baking powder. And I'm just going to stir those around with a whisk to get them combined. Then I'll set that to one side and I'll whisk the eggs. So I'm going to put the eggs into a larger bowl, and I'm going to add the sugar as well, and I'm going to whisk these with my hand mixer until they become pale and quite thick. I have to say, you don't necessarily have to do this. You could just whisk them until they come together and then add the walnuts in, but I'm going to thicken them because it puts some air into them. So that's got the eggs a little bit airy. So that's good enough. So I've transferred the figs, dates and butter to a larger bowl, and I'm going to put the walnuts in, and I'm just going to stir those around. And as you can see, that baking soda has become quite active, so the fruit should be nice and softened. And then I'm going to pour my beaten egg mixture with the sugar in, and there's not too much sugar in this cake because the figs and the dates are both very sweet. And with that in, I'm just going to give that a stir. I don't want to knock the air out, but I just want to get it a little bit combined, like that. And then I'm going to put the dry ingredients in, and I'm simply going to stir this gently until the dry ingredients are all incorporated with everything else. So that's mixed in. It's quite wet, as you can see, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into my loaf tin, and this is a £2 loaf tin. Some recipes I've seen suggested it needs to be a £1 loaf tin, but I don't think so for 1 minute. And so that's in the tin, and I really want to scrape the bowl down and put the rest in. Well, I say the rest, it's only about a tablespoon. I'll see if I can, but I don't want to overfill it. So I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for between 55 and 70 minutes until I can poke a skewer in the centre and it comes out clean. And once it comes out clean, I take it out of the oven and allow it to cool down for a little while before I take it out of the tin. Then I'll cool it completely, and once it's cooled completely, I'll come back and show you the results. So I baked the date and fig loaf cake for 65 minutes. After 45 minutes, I put some aluminium foil on top of it so that the top wouldn't brown any further, and I tested it after 55 minutes and it was still a bit moist inside, So I left it for another 10 minutes, tested it again, and it was fine. I've taken it out of the oven and I left it for about 10 minutes and then put it onto a wire rack to cool down completely. Now it's still actually a little bit warm, but I've cut it and I'll show you what it looks like. So it's baked up quite nicely, as you can see, and it's got the mixture of the dates, figs and the walnuts. So I'll have a taste of a piece. It is very soft and moist, but you get the crunch of the walnuts as well. If you heard a little bit of extra crunching, that's the fig seeds that were crunching between my teeth as I was eating it. It does taste very, very good. And I think I said earlier, you could actually add some spices in, and this would be ideal at Christmas time. So I hope you've enjoyed this recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there would be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link for it below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future, so until then, happy baking.